Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be working on my 2008 BMW 335i. My issue is I don't have any LEDs lit up on my shift indicator. It actually started with the park LED going out, and then slowly all of them went out, and then I lost my sport mode, my DS. Let's start the car up. So I have no LEDs here. Go into reverse. Got nothing. I got it in drive. If I move it over, no change. I'm back and forth. Got nothing. So I found a couple other videos on YouTube talking about how the wires inside here actually break. And I'm gonna fix it. I figured I'd document it. You know, there are other walkthroughs that give you a general idea. I'll try to make this a little more thorough. So the first step is going to be to get this trim out of the way. So you want to set your e-brake. We'll go to the key on to the run position. Put it into neutral. So you're going to want to push in the knob here, and then just lift up and watch yourself when you're pulling up. It can be a little tough if you've never done it before. Just like that. Next, you're going to want to come in here and just pry up on this. So you want to get underneath it like that and just lift up gently. So I want to get the car back to the park position before I mess with that. Yeah, so I'm back in park. I just use a plunger without inserting it the whole way. That way I can go key off. And we'll tackle this connection here. Just like that. We're going to want to clear this so that we can lift up and kind of pull back. Now I feel a plug down here, which I'll show you in a second. See this blue plug here? That goes right here. And I see another one here. Looks like that, and it goes straight back. And then if you look in here, you can see this white connection for the cigarette lighter. You just squeeze the sides and that comes out. Now you can lift up on this whole center console piece and get it safely out of the way. So I had this going straight up. You had this coming straight through this way, and then if you have iDrive, you have this going into your iDrive controller. And the issue should be with this harness down here. There should be some broken wires going into here. So our main objective is going to be to get this piece, this cover, plastic cover removed, so we can free up the harness that's tucked behind here. And the only way to do that would be to remove these Torx bolts. There's 3 of them. That way we can kind of lift up on this and tilt it this way and get access to a couple, I think there's 2 or 3 of these smaller Torx screws that are on the side that are going to allow this harness to move out of the way. That way we can free up this, the other part of this harness here. So I'm going to get started by removing these Torx. I'll let you know what size they are. Okay, so these are T30 Torx. Now, we want to try lifting up on this and see we got the wiggle room we need now. I'm going to try disconnecting this blue harness here just so it's out of our way. That's good. There's another one here, a black. Cut those out of the way so you can focus on the important areas. I just need to be able to get these bolts out here. There's 3 of them, so I don't think I have to take too much more out to be able to do that. I just got to be able to get on those. So I'm going to see what size those are and try that out now. On second thought, I'm just going to give myself some room here. So there's a harness up here. Let's get that out of the way. And let's tilt up. Yeah, might as well give yourself some room. Maybe a little tricky trying to get this rubber seal back into place after. But that's all the room we're going to need now. Just like that. You can actually see down into the tunnel. But you may want to have a vacuum cleaner handy too, because you got some degraded foam here that can make a bit of a mess. But now we got all the room we're going to need. So I recommend that you guys do that. Here's where we need to work. And this is a T10 Torx. They're not going to be very tight, so you can just use your hand. They're all the same length. Now this piece comes off. This was in our way. And see this harness here? That's tucked in. We're going to pull up on this. And you can't get that out of there unless you know, credit to the other people that made the walkthrough on this. They just basically got a flathead to wedge some room in here. So I'm going to get actually a plastic trim removal tool to kind of get that up and out of the way to relieve this. And we'll see where our breakage is. Alright, so we'll try wedging our trim tool in here and be conscious of there's a couple wires here. Let's avoid prying on those and just get to find a good spot to pry. It's not going to take a whole lot, just barely some. Let's try a little bit more. There. So you don't have to really even go too far, pop it off anything. Just basically wedge it out of your way and then push it back into place. This is a solenoid, your shift lock, interlock. And what we're going to look for is in this harness here, somewhere in here, for there to be some damaged wires. It's really sticky and messy. I'm just going to replace this tape after. So you already found a couple. Let's check them all out. See that? Definite design flaw. You know, it lasted 180,000 miles on this car, so I guess I can't complain, but you know. So we don't have to go too far. This stuff's super messy and sticky. It's degraded. And we're going to inspect all these. They don't look very good. Some of them are ready to go. These are gone. And we're going to have to clean that up. I'm going to cut this with some scissors, and then we'll strip them and repair them, which I'll show. Just be warned that you may want to wear some gloves when you're doing the work, but get rid of this excess factory tape. And ideally something alcohol based would be good, but I'm going to try what I have kicking around, which is it's the closest thing to electronics cleaner I have, some mass airflow, but you know, any kind of alcohol should be good. does a great job of getting rid of the stickiness for you. So you can do the appropriate repairs. So now, if we look at these, they're all a little bit iffy. You know, they're about ready to all break, pretty much. So I'm going to go through them all, strip and repair them. I'm not going to route them in the same spot that they were, because it's, you know, they get yanked on when you move over to sport mode. I'm instead going to kind of try to leave them some slack and keep them out of the way of danger, but at the same time try my best to route these better. So I'll strip those down. I've got my wire strippers handy, just a basic pair like that. It's important that you don't cut the wire completely, because you gotta work with whatever length is remaining. So that looks good. So I got those two ends stripped right there. I'm gonna go after these now. So I have my heat shrink set here. I'm gonna grab a couple pieces out of it. I'm gonna cut them in half. Cut one of these in half. And we'll slide it up the wire. You know what? For the sake of simplicity, this is a good tight connection. If you use really small heat shrink and just fold the wire over like that, that's a very tight connection. It's not going to go anywhere. I'm comfortable with that, because I made it super tight, and those are going to hug right on there, and I folded it over. So, not being lazy really here, it's just, you know, I'd have to use oversized heat shrink tube if I were to use solder, because I'd have to be able to, the heat will transfer up the wire, and it will start to shrink, and I wouldn't be able to slide back over the joint. So I'm going to just take the simple approach here. I'm going to heat these guys up with a lighter, shrink them down, and then I'll tape up the other ones. I checked them actually. The insulation's cracked, but the wires are completely intact, so I'm going to simplify that part too and just throw some tape over that. It looks kind of silly being so close to that cloth, but just exercise common sense. That's a good tight shrink. So now what I need to do is reinforce the other wires wherever the joints were. I'm just going to do that with some electrical tape, and then I'll electrical tape the whole thing. This is how I'm going to reinforce and re-insulate these wires. Just get some good quality electrical tape, fold over it like that. I'm going to wrap the harness up. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to, this time we're just going to let it stay here. Let it have the slack so when you rock back and forth it's not going to crack those wires again. So let's try to get this back into position. Next step is going to be to restore this cover here. And as I mentioned, I don't want the same problem coming back, so we're not tucking this in here. We're going to route it differently. So basically, guide this back into place. I can stay out of the way. Okay, now this rubber seal has to be tucked back in place as you put this back down. So you gotta kind of fold it like this. Get it started. Okay, once you tuck the seal in place, get it all, you can see there it's all back into place. You can rotate it left and right to help it seat itself home. When you put these screws through here, it actually pulls it down and presses down against the rubber seal to the chassis of the car. So make sure you restore all your harnesses, anything you took out, and start putting the screws and everything back in place, which I'll do now. Once you got those three taken down, grab your harness. You got your black one that goes below, and then you got your blue one that connects into here. And then plug it in so that can stay in place. Now the routing of this wire, for the sake of giving it room to move back and forth, we're going to just leave it like that so it can live on the side here, and it'll have all the room it needs when you go left and right. And I reinforced the wires too. So this is going to go into the shifter here and here. We're ready to just double check that everything looks good. Clean up the wiring a bit. And let's bring the center console back into position. First step would be get it into position. Connect your cigarette lighter harness over there, and then as you lower this down, you're ready with this white harness. We're good there. And then the blue harness. So I'm going to put my foot on the brake. I'm going to use my pick tool to lift this up. I don't know if you can see here, but I want to be able to put this into neutral. Just so that this can come down easy. So just before you're all, the cable on the left is relatively short, so you got to be nearly back down before you try to insert that. Okay. And lastly, back here, if you have iDrive, just back here, plug this in. Make sure your armrest is up. Make sure your boot is positioned well. And then gently start to clip things into place. Okay, so the first good sign is I have my park LED back. Start it up. Put it in reverse. Neutral. Drive. Sport. I got my S back. Rocket down. Got my M1. M2, M3. Back to drive. Test that my shift lock is still working as it should. All's well. So problem's being resolved. Anyway, there's other videos on YouTube showing you how to do this. I just figured I'd give my contribution. Doesn't hurt to see another perspective, another approach. Crimp connectors were used, and so in my case I just opted to use some really tight heat shrink tube, strip and reconnect the wires, reinforce the cracks with electrical tape on the other wires, and just use the heat shrink to bind it all together tight. That should hold fine. I didn't need to mess around with soldering. That's optional, of course, but we left enough slack in there that the harness can have a bit of wiggle room without getting ruined every time you put it into sport mode. So thanks for watching and good luck.